What's up, YouTube? This is Chris again. We're back with Gordon here and the Turbo 5.3. So today what we're doing is we're going to do lines today. So I'm going to show you kind of what I did with the power steering line real quick, and then I'll show you how I made the lines from the turbo drain to the oil pan basically. So this truck has hydro boost on it. I want to keep the hydro boost. So what I ended up having to do was make a line to fit the 5.3 power steering. You can see right here. So I think the line that went from the power steering was this one. So I went here, follow it down this way, and I ended up taking the hose. You can see it bolts onto the back of the power steering there. What I ended up doing was I took the stock hose and I took it to this place called Action Hose here. We're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So Action Hose in Albuquerque actually hooked it up. They put the right end on there with the fitting to fit onto the 5.3 power steering. So they basically cut the factory one off and then put the new end on there. So it could bolt on there, and it was like $40. So shout out to Action Hose. They did it while you wait. It took like 10 minutes. It was pretty awesome. So that's good to go. And now, like I said, we're going to do the turbo drain over here. So this is it. We just have it clocked up this way so we can get the fitting on it. But the 10AN is what I'm using. And when we get this clocked right, it's going to go down that way, and it's going to be pointing straight down. It's going to go from here basically to, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's going to go right down there. And I welded it, or didn't weld, but I got a 10AN bung. I ordered a non-weld one actually. And to the front of the oil pan, because basically you don't want to put that into where there's standing oil. You want the oil to drain in there and then run down the oil pan. So you don't want it to try and run into standing oil, if that makes sense. So it has to be where there's not oil. So up at the very front of the pan toward the front of the motor is where it's going. So I drilled that in there, and it just has an O-ring on each side, and you tighten it up. It was pretty easy. So I did that before I put the oil pan back on. And I'm going to show you now how I did that. So walk over here. So here's how I got to where we're at. I wanted to go originally with the Russell fittings and lines, but those were, I like those. They're high quality, but they were really expensive, and I didn't want to pay that much for them. So I ended up looking at Jegs, and Jegs has their own line of fittings and hoses. So here's what they ended up looking like. I got the black ones. That's what they look like. This is a 10AN. It's a 45-degree fitting, and they were like $7 or $8 a piece, so I can deal with that. And the Russell were almost double that, not quite, but almost. So this is their 10AN hose. It's like the Pro Flow hose, something they call it. Now I'm going to show you the process of making. Basically, just going to make a hose for that turbo drain to go from the turbo to the bottom of the oil pan. So what you do is you take the end of the fitting off here, just like that, and then this is going to go on. You basically just kind of put that on like that. It's kind of a pain. It fits super tight, so you're going to have to push that on there. And what you'll do is you'll look inside here, and you'll see the hose coming up into the fitting. And once it gets to the very bottom of those threads in there, that's when you know you got it completely seated in there right. So give me a second while I work on that. Like I said, it's going to take a while. Alright, so we got the hose seated in the fitting. If you can see in there, what do you think? Yeah, you can see how the hose comes up right to the bottom of the threads, and so it's pretty much fully seated in there. I've already used this to make a couple of the fuel lines and the return line, things like that. And like I said, these Jegs hose, I'm really impressed with this. It seems like good stuff. So everything's fitted right, nice and tight. So that's on there. So this will probably go onto the turbo side. So we'll end up screwing that into the fitting, put it on the turbo, and then we'll just kind of run this excess line. I don't think it's going to be this long. And then we'll kind of mark it where it's going to end up. Then we'll cut it and put the other fitting on this end. So to put this in, I know they make like fitting lube to go on these threads to make it easier, but we just use WD-40, and I've been all right. I've had pretty good luck with that before. I've done this before, not necessarily with the Jegs, but with this type of fitting. So we'll just put some WD-40 on there to help out. Mind that. So I thread this on as far as I can with my hands. And the easiest way to do this is with a vise. They make what they call soft jaws for your vise, so you can just put this in a vise and turn it that way, but a little too pricey for me, so I come up with this way. I just use like a microfiber cloth, and I'll put it in my vise like that. Set this in here, and then we'll tighten it up. So of course, get the vise, the flat part of the fitting to the flat part of the vise there. We'll tighten it up pretty good, not like, don't crank on this so you can't anymore, but just get it relatively tight. That's good. So, and I found with these fittings, you can use your crescent wrench. Just be careful that when you put them on there, you're not going to booger up the finish on here. The AN wrenches work better, but for some reason my 10 AN won't fit on there. I don't know if it's a little bit bigger, but either way, I'm going to use this. All right, so that's probably good enough right there, I'm hoping. So I usually go till I can't see the threads anymore on this, and then I'll stop. So we're going to try it like that, and if it leaks, we'll just tighten a little more. So now we'll go bolt this on the turbo real quick. All right, so that's pretty close to tightened up. So we will run this kind of down here. So based on what I feel, we're going to mark it about right here. That's where we're going to cut this line. So I hit about my mark, and then what I'm going to do is put the tape around this in about the middle where my mark was, and that way I know I'm just going to cut in the middle of the tape. And aside from also marking this, the reason I'm taping it is because it's going to help with the ends fraying when you cut the line. So when your ends fray out, it makes it hard to get the other fitting on there. So hopefully this will kind of keep it all together. Just use a grinder for this. I mean, you can use a hacksaw, grinder, Dremel tool, whatever, but I find this works all right. So. There we go. That's ready to go. Cut it pretty clean. There's a couple little frays, but not too bad. And then what little there is, you can cut that with a razor blade if it bothers you. We'll get the other end, which is actually on the oil pan, and then we'll thread that on just like we did this way, and then we'll have our hose made. Give me 1 second here and we'll get that done. So I got the other end started just like we did the first part. So I'm going to push that on there until we see the bottom of the hose, or the top of the hose come to the bottom of the threads, and then we'll be good to go. Again, as you can see, we're pretty much there. There's the bottom of the top of the hose at the bottom of the threads. You can see it in there. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, that's good.
Make that out. So, and then, like I said, that's where I want it. So now we'll get the vise again. All right, looks like we just cleared the threads. There you have it. That is the oil drain hose right there. So we'll bolt. I don't know if I'm gonna bolt this on now. Maybe just a test fit. It's not gonna be permanent because we're still having to take everything in and out. I still have to put the wastegate on the turbo and all that. So that should do it. But that's how it is. It's pretty easy. Now, like I said, this Jag stuff seems to be pretty cool, man. I like the way it looks, and it was easy to work with. So hopefully it doesn't leak, and we'll press on.